So is that seeking? What is seeking really? Why do we do it?
Well, you do it because of this intuition. There's an intuition that, there's something more. There's an intuition of like, I am not just this conditioned human being that lives from this age to this age and then I die. There's something more. There's an intuition. And so then there's a seeking. You start to seek because you realize that intuition. That seeking at that point, it could be is the first step. Is like, okay, I know there's something more. I'm not happy in this world. I'm not satisfied. As good as my relationships are, it's not really it. There's got to be more. So that seeking starts to happen. And you're seeking out of your own ignorance at that point, because who you are is already who you are. But you don't know that because you think you're this encapsulated separate sense of self with your history and your problems and your stuff, and one day maybe if you improve yourself enough, then you'll be happy. But it just seems like very arduous and never ending, and it's never going to happen. Most people become very, very cynical. Even like, can I be free? Well, come on, free. I can be a little bit more happy, but free, are you kidding? So the seeking comes from that. But then eventually, if you really give yourself to that impulse for something higher, that process is a constant sacrifice. And you're constantly in that process, you're constantly having to sacrifice your wrong ideas about things, about yourself. You're finding out that you're not these self-images that you've maintained and you create and you change depending on who you're with. So as you're going, you could say in this process of liberation, you're just sacrificing things that aren't true continuously. And then it's a stripping away process. It feels like you're just stripping. But every time as you're going through this stripping process, which seems like it's happening in time, you're recognizing deeper and deeper that freedom is here and now. Who I am is already who I am. And then because we're so habitually convinced that we're not, then the seeking for something that's already here continues. But it starts to lose its power, because you recognize the truth that I am already who I am. I don't need to seek. And we can all understand that and then continue to seek, because we have these ideas underneath. Everybody has the idea that I'm not good enough and there's something wrong with me. And so if you're doing a spiritual practice, and you're doing a spiritual practice, whether it be meditation or any other spiritual practice, if you're doing it trying to get something, you're seeking. If you're trying to get any particular experience, if you're trying to get to be a better person, if you're trying to prove anything, how devoted you are to Spirit or God, if you're trying to do anything, you're seeking. Because you're already in a position that I'm not free. I am not this conditioned body-mind. And so that's the process.
But how can I be free if I feel bad and I know I have all these habits that I'm always doing? I want to be a better person. How can I be free when I want to be a better person?
Because that's where understanding comes in. That's where you have to engage with spiritual text or spiritual teachers or really that. I mean, you have to have some kind of interaction, because you have to learn and you have to understand. Most of the time when people first start the spiritual path, they have an intuition about something. That's why they start the spiritual path. There's got to be more. But they're very convinced that they're stuck in this body. So it's almost like you've got this mask on your face it's so close. It's almost like the skin on your body. You just think it's who you are. But through practice, through inquiry, through contemplation, you start to recognize, oh my God, I am not who I thought I was. I'm aware of the crazy thoughts in my head. I am aware of the habits that I do. I'm aware that I don't like what I'm doing. I'm aware of all of the play of life that's happening. I'm not just that. I'm not in it to the point where I'm disconnected from everything else. When you become aware that you're aware, and you start doing a practice moment to moment to say, I am not what I'm thinking, I am not what I'm feeling, I'm upset, I'm depressed, I'm this, I'm that, I'm lost, I'm hurt, I'm rejected. But if you're aware of all of that I just said, and you recognize, oh my God, that means I must be prior to all of that, then you have space. And that's the first step. And then you start to recognize, oh my God, the paradox is I can be a completely screwed up human being with all these ideas about myself. That's true from one perspective. But simultaneously, I am that which is aware, which is already free of all of that. So if you can hold both perspectives, and then you'll be able to continue on this path. But the moment that you actually become aware that you're aware, and you don't identify with the content of what you're aware of, you identify with that which is aware. You see, in that moment, you're free. So freedom is here and now. That's the important thing. You will not, on this process, you don't have to spend, if you, let's just say that you're 30 years old and you spent 30 years completely convinced that you are a separate sense of self. You don't have, it doesn't have to take 30 years of intense spiritual practice to have the experience or the recognition of that which is prior to the content. It can happen on your first meditation. It can happen any time that you consciously or unconsciously drop the imposition of the separate sense of self. So that's the liberating factor. If you had to wait 30 years, 40 years, 50 years in order to recognize that you are actually free from all of the craziness of your mind and your emotions, most people, they can't even wait a week these days. They want everything really, really quick. So that's it. It's a recognition of prior freedom and the truth of that. And it's also embracing the fact that there's a conditioned body-mind here that needs some purification. And both can coexist at the same time. And you'll go through a process of purification. But just because you're not a perfectly enlightened being doesn't mean that your natural state is not that, and not one of prior freedom, love, ecstasy. They coexist. But if you really want to be free, you want to transcend the attachment to feeling, the attachment to identity of who you think you are. You want to transcend all that. And then you recognize, if you keep going, you'll recognize there's really nothing to transcend. Because I've always been that which is aware, and the content is just things that are rising and falling away, whether it be my thoughts, my feelings, the clouds, the birds, the dog barking. It doesn't make any difference. It's just all content. It's not who you are. So really there's nothing to transcend. And yet, unless we actually purify ourselves from the idea that there is something to transcend, we're always going to suffer. And we're always going to cause suffering for other people. It's just the way it is.